You've been watching The Hub. Stay tuned for my interview with former pilot Mark Weiss on the plane crash in China last Monday. Coming up after a short break. Welcome back. On Monday, a China Eastern Airlines Boeing 737-800 carrying 132 people crashed after plunging from over 6,000 meters near Wuzhou on the remote hills of Tang County in the Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region in South China. 1 hour after flight MU5735 left Kunming, the aircraft crashed with such force that much of it disintegrated on impact. Search teams have recovered a black box, but the second one containing flight data has not yet been found. To shed some insights into what may have happened in the final moments, I'm joined today in Washington, D.C. by Mark Weiss, president of Weiss Consulting Group and former pilot of American Airlines. He retired some 10 years ago. Mark, great to have you with us. We're still all pained and shocked by what happened this past Monday. Harrowing stories of the passengers and their families visiting the sites of debris. Based on the information publicized in the past 5 days, what do you think happened to this doomed flight?
Well, first, certainly my heart goes out to everybody. You know, aviation is in some ways a very small community, and we all feel the tragedy when this happens. Anything that I say or anybody else says right now, in truth, is absolute speculation. The reason you do investigations is to whittle away at the what could have been this, could it have been that, to come to a definitive probable cause of this was most likely the reason this accident happened. Because the reason you do the investigation is not just to find the cause, but you want to prevent this from happening again for the same or similar reasons. So getting this information, working together with the CAAC, the investigatory bodies here in the United States, the NTSB, the FBI, the FAA, Boeing, General Electric, who made the engines, putting all the experts together and collaborating, putting all their brain power together, their collective knowledge, is what we're trying to do so that we don't want other families to have to suffer through this.
So, like you said, which scenario is more likely at this point? I mean, we cannot rule out other possibilities at this point, but what do you think is the more likely scenario or more likely scenarios?
Well, there's a couple that come to mind, but again, this is absolute speculation. Airplanes don't fall out of the sky. If you're cruising, this happened at what they call the top of descent, just as you were really transitioning to start your descent for a landing. What could have happened? We've seen situations in the past where somebody was in the cockpit, whether it was a disgruntled passenger, whether it was a disgruntled pilot that actually wanted to commit suicide. We've seen that a few times. That's a possibility. We don't know who was in the cockpit until the voice recorder, which has been recovered, is analyzed, and that information.
So it could have been a pilot committing suicide, or a passenger, or even a crew. We don't know.
Absolutely. We don't know because we don't know who was in that cockpit at the time. Now, that airplane, interestingly, had a pilot, the captain, the pilot, and then there was a second officer who was doing some training. Another scenario could have been that they were changing on that airplane, and perhaps there was an autopilot on, or the 737 cockpit is not that spacious. Somebody could have knocked into somebody and perhaps knocking off the autopilot, pushing somebody forward onto a control column and forcing that plane down. Now, normally you try to recover from something like that, but from the trajectory, what you saw, the telemetry in that airplane went down like that. So is it a scenario that's possible? Yes, it is, but we don't know at this time. And then however that happened, if that was one of the pilots still trying to control that airplane, did they have the training necessary to get out of a dive like that without having the airplane break apart? Remember, that airplane hit the ground in 77 seconds. You had rising terrain, an airplane going down at 500 miles an hour. You don't have a whole lot of time to react. So all of these scenarios are true. It could have been that perhaps part of the aircraft came apart. The horizontal stabilizer on the back of the, which allows the aircraft to use the pitch axis. If that had been damaged, if that had come apart, if there was a mechanical problem with it, that could have forced the airplane into a position where perhaps you could not have recovered.
Well, Mark, allow me to ask you this, if I may. You know, based on the current information, do you think it's more likely to be mechanical failure than a misoperation, lack of training by either of the pilot or any of the pilot? Or is it more likely to be due to a misoperation by a pilot rather than a mechanical failure?
We don't know. You know, and in truth, I'm trying to put out scenarios. I've run through some of the scenarios the last couple of days in a 737 flight simulator myself. We've tried all of that, and even with my training, I wasn't able to pull out of it. One of the other pilots, who was an acrobatic pilot, was able to pull out of it. But it, you know, and I had very good training. It's speculation, and in all honesty, I don't really know. And you don't want to point fingers and be accusatory. But the takeaway from all of this is when you get an answer, if there is credible evidence that upset training and recovery training could have helped this situation, then that should be something that would be incorporated into new training scenarios, not just at China Eastern, but at all other carriers, so that situations like this don't happen again.
Mark, you operated a 737-800, which was the exact model of the doomed flight this past Monday that went down in South China. But this model is generally considered a pretty solid model with a strong safety record, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a magnificent airplane. There's over 4,000 of these flying around the world today. It's a well-built airplane. It's got a great reputation. Pilots like flying it. You know, this was the aircraft, the precursor to the MAX, the 737 MAX. That situation on that airplane was very different from the MAX is very different from the 737-800.
How so?
Well, the 737-800 does not have the MCAS system in it. That was the system in the tail that moved the horizontal stabilizer. And if it's okay, I have a model of an airplane. I'm just going to show you, if you can see this. The horizontal stabilizer is this portion back here. On the MAX airplane, when you were trying to move that, this keeps the airplane stabilized in the pitch axis. When you move that, it stabilizes the airplane and it moves quickly. What happened in the MAX airplane is when the pilots tried to stabilize the aircraft, this would move in the opposite direction. It would go on and off and on and off, and the pilots didn't know it was available, and what happened was it just started bringing the airplane down like that. I know that this is the same situation, but the 737 does not have that equipment on board the aircraft. And again, the other two MAX aircraft, that happened right after takeoff. They didn't have enough altitude. So, you know, they're kind of like we say, apples and oranges. You know, Boeing aircraft, it could have been an Airbus. It could have been any model aircraft that this would have happened to. Getting the flight data recorder and the voice recorder and sharing that information with the other interested parties globally is going to help the whole aviation industry.
So far, only one black box is recovered. What can we expect from the other black box? And to piece them together, what information can we get? Can you remind our audience again?
Certainly, there's two. The flight data recorder, which takes into account in the 737-800, takes over 1,000 parameters from everything where every switch, every dial, every movement of the control column, every position, functioning systems on the airplane are recorded every second. So you know, really, it's the general health of the airplane is what you're looking at. You're going to find out whether or not that airplane had a problem. You're going to find out whether the horizontal stabilizer had a problem. You're going to find out if the oil was on or off, who was flying the airplane. And you coordinate that with the cockpit voice recorder, which is, there's a number of microphones in the cockpit, and that captures, and I apologize for my puppy in the background.
No worries, Mark. How long do you think this investigation, this analysis of the black boxes can take? How long does it usually take?
It can take a year, and that's not uncommon. The thing is, information sharing. Remember, you're going to have people here. The voice recording is all going to be in Chinese. If you share that with other people, you have to have people who are qualified, aviation, English, and qualified people to be able to help decipher that for the other people who don't speak Chinese or working on the investigation. Aviation is a community that's close-knit, and we all respect each other's abilities, and we make sure that it can stay that way.
Senior former pilot Mark Weiss, thanks so much for shedding light on this very important issue. Thank you for joining us at this hour, and that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. On behalf of our team, I want to send our deepest condolences to those who died from this plane crash, and our thoughts and prayers are certainly with their families. Thank you for watching this episode. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. I'll see you again next week.